Hello, everyone. We're going to be starting in about a minute or two. We're going to let some folks get on, but I'll welcome you as you are here. We've got a full agenda. Let's just give it a minute. Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Paz Artaza-Regan. I'm the program manager at Catholic Climate Covenant, and it's nice to welcome you today. It's almost 90 degrees here in the DC area. We went from very short spring, it seems, to full summer. First, I want to thank you all for joining this webinar, and we're going to be in this webinar providing you with the tools and the strategies, resources to participate in the Catholics Are Still In campaign. Before we get started, though, here at the Covenant, we always like to start our webinars with a prayer. So if you could all silence your hearts and remember that we're always in the presence of God. This is a prayer from Caritas Australia. God of creation, you created night and day. You separated the sea from the sky. You gave life to all living creatures and saw that it was good. Help us to reconnect with the majesty of your creation. God of love, fill us with your love for all of creation. Empty us of apathy, selfishness, and fear. Inspire us to live simply and in harmony with creation. Help us to be good stewards, caring for all creation with self-sacrificing and nurturing love. God of compassion, breathe into us solidarity with all who suffer now and the future generations who will suffer because of our environmental irresponsibility. Help us to put people before profit and being before having. God of justice, empower us to work together as one global community, to find creative, just solutions to protect those most vulnerable in our world and all of creation for future generations. Move us into action for climate justice and to restore your creation. Amen.
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 Some housekeeping items before we really get started. The video is being recorded and will be sent to anyone who registered in the next couple of days. There will be question and answer at the end of all the presentations. Please submit your questions in the questions box in the control panel on the right. You may wish to indicate to whom the question is directed to, so which speaker it is that you'd like the question to be directed to. If you're having any audio issues during this webinar, it might be because of your Wi-Fi connection coming up and down. We recommend that then you go and change the audio to your phone. So call in with the PIN number there that you go, when you click on audio, you use phone call and they give you a PIN, and that way you can hear the audio better. At this point, let me move to welcoming our panelists. We've got a full house today. We are first going to be hearing from Marianne Comfort with the Sisters of Mercy. Marianne is Justice Coordinator for Earth, Anti-Racism, and Women for the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas. She serves on the steering committee of the Catholic Climate Covenant and the Global Catholic Climate Movement. She facilitates the Washington, D.C.-based Interreligious Working Group on Extractive Industries. We're also then going to hear from Jose Aguto, who is the Associate Director at the Covenant. Following Jose, we have Ann Kelly, who is Senior Director of Policy Program at CERES, a nonprofit advocacy organization that mobilizes investors and business leadership to build a more sustainable global economy. She also directs the Business for Innovative Climate and Energy Policy, which I think is a great acronym of BICEP, which is a coalition of 41 leading companies that includes Nike, Starbucks, eBay, etc., that work to create meaningful climate energy policy at the federal level. Then Marisa Vertrees is the Global Organizing Director at Global Catholic Climate Movement, an organization directed to helping Catholics around the world live out Laudato Si through spiritual practice, lifestyle institutional change, and advocating in their communities. After them, I will be talking to you for a few minutes as well. Right now, let us get started with Marianne, who's going to answer the all-important question: why is this campaign going? Why did we create it? And why now? Marianne?
Great. Thank you, Paz. As someone privileged to work for a congregation of women religious and to serve on the steering committee of the Catholic Climate Covenant, I'm very excited about this rollout of the Catholic Climate Declaration. For the Catholic community in the U.S., this is an opportunity to share with the world how the Church has been giving voice to grave concerns about the impact of humans' exploitation of nature for at least 55 years, beginning with Pope Paul VI and through Popes John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and now Francis. And we also have our own U.S. Bishop statement on climate change that was published back in 2001. Having hundreds, if not thousands, of dioceses, parishes, religious orders, and Catholic ministries, institutions, and organizations declaring we are still in, that's more an exclamation point on this moral call rather than the opening words. The Catholic Climate Declaration tells the world that, like U.S. cities, states, corporations, investors, and other institutions, we are still in supporting the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. And I think it's really important to name those commitments are to keep global warming to no more than 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and to avoid the most dangerous effects of climate change. We must make these goals our own if we are truly to respond to Pope Francis's challenge to us to both hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. For the congregation for whom I work, the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, signing on to the declaration fulfills our own commitment to work zealously toward the sustainability of all life. We signed the declaration in solidarity with our sisters who are experiencing new patterns of devastating storms in the Philippines, and also in solidarity with other sisters concerned about melting glaciers in Argentina that over time will diminish farmers' water supply. Last year, Mercy Sisters and their communities in Peru experienced torrential rains and catastrophic flooding that resulted from unique weather patterns caused by a warming Pacific Ocean. When we hear the cries of these and so many other communities, how can we not respond? I'm sure that each of you carries the stories of people and whole communities impacted by climate change, as well as stories of the devastation of Earth, our common home, from warming temperatures and rising sea levels. Signing your Catholic diocese, parish, institution, or organization onto the declaration is a clear expression of solidarity. In addition to an opportunity, though, signing the declaration also presents responsibilities. Saying we are still in implies an active commitment on all of our parts, a commitment to pursuing our own personal and institutional ecological conversion, and a commitment to engaging in advocacy for large-scale climate solutions on the state, national, and international levels. Signing the declaration hopefully will open up conversations in our dioceses, parishes, institutions, and organizations about changes in practices and policies that we can adopt to align with our commitment to keeping climate change in check. Then, with the Catholic Climate Declaration in hand and with examples of how we are living out that commitment to climate action, we can then, with integrity and with the authority of all the signatories, advocate for policies that will move us as a nation and global community toward fulfilling the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. We can, for instance, urge our legislators to adopt bold measures to shift from the fossil fuel economy to renewable energy responsive to local needs. And we can urge legislators to fund mitigation and adaptation projects for communities most vulnerable to climate change. I'm confident that we will have an overwhelming response to the Catholic Climate Declaration, both in the number of signatories and the commitments that flow from it. I'll now turn it to Jose to flesh out the details of that declaration.
Great, thank you so much, Marianne, for your wise words. And I first wanted to start with, I have 3 parts to this presentation. First is to affirm how strong the U.S. Catholic Church and our church writ large is about action on climate change and about our care for creation, and doing so in a manner that recognizes that some of your fellow parishioners or your leaders may not understand where the church is on this issue. The second part is to talk about the declaration, the time frame, and some of its critical aspects. And third is to talk about approaches that you can make with your leaders to encourage them to sign on to the declaration. So first, I wanted to start with this profound and beautiful statement from the USCCB back in 2001. And the rhetorical flourish and the beautiful imagery that it conjures to recognize how strongly our church is on climate change. And so it says, as people of faith, we are convinced that the earth is the Lord's and all it holds. Our Creator has given us the gift of creation, the air we breathe, the water that sustains life, the fruits of the land that nourish us, and the entire web of life without which human life cannot flourish. All of this God created and found very good. We believe our response to global climate change should be a sign of our respect for God's creation. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, Paz, I seem to be unable to move the slides. Oh, very good. And so this care for creation is grounded in Catholic social teaching, and I hope that you can take these slides and others as firm evidence of our position, and that's why I'm bringing them up. And I know that many of you understand this already conceptually. I'm bringing the documentation to you. What you have here are 3 of the 7 themes of Catholic social teaching that are listed in the USCCB's website. And you can see how they're intertwined when we talk about one human family, about our preferential option for the poor and vulnerable, and our stewardship of creation, all combined, noting specifically here that care for creation is one of the explicit themes of Catholic social teaching. Next slide, please. Sorry, pause. Okay. And with regard to the climate science, again, the Bishops' Conference is strong on acknowledging that they respond to what is the scientific consensus, and that we must act on that consensus as it relates to climate change. Next slide, please. What is that? Oops, one back. Sorry, pause. What is that understanding of the climate science? Most recently, the National Climate Assessment by 13 federal agencies, including the EPA, recognizing that it's extremely likely that human activities, especially emissions of greenhouse gases, are the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. And then sort of what people in the media call a money quote, coming from Scientific American: the evidence linking rising sea levels of greenhouse gases and global warming is as strong as the link between smoking and lung cancer. You can take that kind of quote to people who may be skeptical about the climate science and indicate how firm the scientific community is, with an imagery and a metaphor and a real life example that everyone understands with regard to the causes of smoking, of lung cancer as it relates to smoking. Next slide, please. We've gone through that. Next slide, please. Sorry, pause. Yes, and after that one. Thank you. Sorry. And so going now to the Catholic Climate Declaration, it is a document that is rooted in our Catholic faith. It is expressed by U.S. Catholic institutions in support of climate action and the Paris Agreement, which Marianne spoke about. It is in response to President Trump's intention to withdraw the United States from the agreement, and it is in solidarity with the We Are Still In campaign, which you will hear more about from Ann Kelly. Next slide. And so our timeline is that back in April 17th, Archbishop Broglio, Bishop Duane, and Bishop Paints sent a letter to their fellow bishops in the United States asking them to support this declaration. Archbishop Broglio is the chair of the USCCB Committee on International Affairs. Bishop Duane is the USCCB chair of Domestic Affairs, and Bishop Pates is the Covenant's Episcopal liaison. So you're seeing a lot of USCCB support for this declaration. A week later, Bishop Pates sent a letter to the U.S. Catholic community, and it is very likely that your Catholic leader, whether he be a pastor or whether she be the executive director of a Catholic NGO, has received this letter. It went across all Catholic institutions who are listed in the official Catholic directory. And so that's the place where we are right now. We are receiving signatures, and we're informing you of this effort, and we're also going to be asking you to do some continued outreach in your spheres in the Catholic community, and Paz and I will talk about that a little bit later. We on June 18th will be announcing the number of Catholic signatures in support of the We Are Still In campaign, and then in September of this year we will be participating in the Global Climate Action Summit, and Marisa will be giving you details about that later on this call. As I suggested, all U.S. Catholic institutions are welcome to sign, and you see the list and you see the beautiful and broad diversity across the U.S. Catholic community of how much we contribute to U.S. society across different aspects of our lives. And importantly for you to know is that institutions within larger institutions can sign. For example, parishes within dioceses, provinces within orders, and departments within universities are all welcome to sign. And only representatives authorized to sign for these institutions can sign onto the declaration. Next, please. We want to engage in 3 ways. And again, noting that any leader in the U.S. Catholic community can be a signatory. We have top-down, peer-to-peer, and bottom-up approaches. And we have resources which can help you in any one of these approaches. And for example, I think of myself and I think of my pastor and what would help me encourage my pastor to sign on. And so on the Catholic Covenant's website, you'll see that you have these resources like an FAQ, frequently asked questions. You have Bishop Pates' letter, which my pastor has probably already received. You also have a document that you can print out, which is a leave behind, which you can hand to your pastor. I can hand to my pastor after Mass on one Sunday and say, Father, would you please consider signing on to this? And then Paz is going to go through some step-by-steps to help you step into this ask, if you will, with your Catholic leaders. Next slide, please. Lastly, I wanted to say and to emphasize that our Catholic approach is one that is transcending partisanship, that we are coming from a place of faith, and as Marianne mentioned, many popes have talked about this, that it is core to our Catholic social teaching, that we want to be able to transcend partisanship, and we want to have changes of heart and talk from a faith perspective. Next slide, please. And so it comes from fundamentally, and I know all of us know this, but I feel like we need to be reminded, uplifted, and strengthened during this time, especially during these challenging times, to live at our faith, because only through our faith are we going to be able to heal the divides and diminish the hatred that we are seeing, and to increase the love that we so desperately need within and among ourselves. And so I leave you with this, the greatest commandment, to love God and to love our neighbors, especially to love our enemies, and to do so with humility that we present to others and that we ask of others and from God, and that we engage in bridge building, noting, as one of my colleagues said, that pontiff means being a bridge builder. And so we too can be bridge builders in strengthening and healing our nation and moving forward. So thank you so much, and wanting to pass this on to Anne.
Thank you so much, Jose and Marianne. I so appreciate you having this conversation and webinar, and I am very grateful for your overall effort. That the Catholics Are Still In campaign is incredibly supportive of We Are Still In. So I'm going to describe the campaign a bit and its fundamental purposes. I just want to highlight something Marianne said that really rang true for me. I think she was quoting Pope Francis in saying that the cry of the earth is a cry of the poor. And it really places global climate change in the context of the profound environmental injustice that it represents. And for centuries, Catholics have worked hard on injustice and on global inequality. And I'm sure you recognize that climate change is only furthering, deepening that profound global inequality with just the stunning injustice that those who are most vulnerable and who are suffering the effects of climate change are not the ones who have caused the problem. And we have to remind ourselves of that, I think, on a very regular basis, especially when some who are less involved in the movement claim that other countries, less developed countries, should step up first before the US. If you look at the total of global emissions, and I don't mean an annual emissions rate, but if you looked at all of the greenhouse gas emissions that are in the atmosphere today, there's just the disproportionate amount really resides with the United States. Is really our personal responsibility as a nation. So I'm just thrilled. I can't think of a group that's better positioned and that has more authority to talk about this profound injustice and to commit yourselves to it. So I very much appreciate that. I also appreciate what Jose just said about faith transcending partisanship. I work on Capitol Hill on a regular basis. We also work in many state jurisdictions, and We Are Still In really arose in the context of this highly unfortunate move by the administration to leave the Paris Agreement. We had sent several CEOs, business leaders, thought leaders, investors to the White House, hoping that the president would make a different decision. He did not. And as a result, we launched what was originally a meme and has simply become a movement called We Are Still In. But to clarify, We Are Still In is not about raising a fist in the air as much as it's about raising a hand and saying, count me in. My business is still in. My tribe is still in. My congregation is still in. My college is still in. My city is still in. We are all in. And that's continued to be the theme of leadership, standing up, being counted, that we've continued throughout this year. There are really three things that we're pursuing as We Are Still In, and these have grown as the movement has grown itself. We have a steering committee of over 26 members representing all of the groups that I just mentioned. And Paz, we could go to the next slide, I think, just to get a little clearer on the scope. I hope my colleague sent in the We Are Still In slide.
No,
really, the three
she didn't.
Oh, I apologize for that. I can speak to it quite easily. Three things that are most important. The first is to assure the global community that, in fact, the U.S. is still in and deeply committed to the Paris Agreement. And that was so evident in Bonn this past November when we were wearing our buttons. Some of you were no doubt there, wearing buttons that said We Are Still In, and moving around the amphitheater, the blue zone as it's called, and members of other countries would come up to us and say, is it true? Oh, so the US is still in. So just confirming that this particular presidential administration does not represent the vast majority of Americans. So we continue to reassure the international community to this day. As I speak, there's a Bonn intercessional going on, and we have representatives there, again, putting forward the commitments of the members of We Are Still In, the broad swath of the US population, the broad swath of the business and investor community as well. Secondly, We Are Still In is about working for policy change. And I think Jose alluded to this, working for change at the local, state, and federal level so that we can have the laws and regulations in place to help to expedite the ushering in of a low carbon economy so that it's easier to buy renewable energy, to make sure all of our facilities are energy efficient, to properly price carbon, and to essentially get closer to our goal stated in the Paris Agreement. So there's a policy angle to this. And again, this is where faith transcending partisanship is just of such vital importance, because we are absolutely committed to post-partisanship in this movement. Third, it's very much to encourage signatories to pursue their own carbon footprint reduction efforts. So this is true whether this is a congregation or a hospital system or a business or a city or a university. We are strongly encouraging entities to set goals for carbon reduction, ideally to set a science-based goal, to pursue the purchase of renewable energy whenever possible, to pursue energy efficiency efforts, to pursue the electrification of transportation fleets to the extent possible, for cities and municipalities to make themselves what we call EV ready, so they're ready for electrification, and to continue to reduce the use of energy overall. So there's tremendous resources available through We Are Still In to do that. We are going to be having educational sessions across the country to help entities have the resources that they need to make those kinds of commitments. I know that you all as an organization are well along the path to doing just that. But ideally, with We Are Still In, we can leverage individual sectors so that cities can leverage the resources of the private sector and vice versa, so that your congregations can leverage the resources available through the cities and states that are participating, so that it's easier to, again, purchase renewable energy, take advantage of the electrification of vehicles and whatnot. So we're going strong, and at this particular moment, as we come close to the 1-year mark of the June 1st unfortunate departure by the president, we are going to be really celebrating We Are Still In. We're going to be coming back with a surround sound of our commitment. We're very excited about your announcement coming up on June 18th. We are then building towards September, and most of you know that in September there will be a global climate action summit in California, where the contributions of what are called non-state actors, and that's just a UN term that includes states, cities, universities, colleges, congregations, businesses, investors, anyone who is not a nation state. And we are seeking to accumulate and aggregate as many actual carbon reduction targets between now and September, and other moves of leadership, other commitments, contributions that all of those entities are making toward addressing climate change. These will be aggregated, and there's both a quantitative and a qualitative element to these, needless to say. And if you went to the Global Climate Action Summit webpage, you would see the various challenges listed, including qualitative elements like just transition. We are deeply committed to making certain that the transition to renewable energy is a just one, and that workers are cared for, those workers who have been deeply invested, in many cases through no choice of their own in the fossil fuel economy, are given options and jobs and choices as we make this transition to a low carbon economy. So that's one of the key qualitative elements of the summit. We're very much looking forward to that in California. And then, of course, the next big milestone will be in Poland in November, when we will once again have a U.S. Climate Action Center to reinforce that the U.S. is in fact still in. Again, I can't thank you enough for taking this campaign so seriously And I wish you I hope that many participants within your faith community sign on to the pledge. And I hope that many of you can participate in the California Summit. And with that, I will look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And questions will be coming at the end of all the presenters. And I'm sorry we didn't have your slide, but you did great without it. At this point, Marisa, if you could get us started here with kind of piggybacking on what Anne was talking about for the September events. Go ahead. Marisa, you have no audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. I apologize. I was on mute during the other speakers. Thank you so much to the Covenant for arranging this webinar and for the We Are Catholics Are Still In campaign. And thank you all of us for joining today. I want to talk a little bit. For me, one of the most exciting things about being part of the Catholic Church is that we really are part of a global community. And we do care deeply in solidarity with those around the world. And just to talk a little bit about the importance of this campaign, I think we've heard, especially from Jose, a really wonderful job of why this is important to us, why Care for Creation is important as Catholics, some of what we've already seen from human-induced climate change. But I just want to emphasize that it's not only because of our care for the intrinsic value of creation, which is so important, as we saw from Pope Francis and Laudato Si, but it's also important with our solidarity with other Catholics. We're already seeing some of the effects of climate change and what this means, the urgency that we see when we look at our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico, the urgency that we see when we look to the effects of climate change-induced famine in Malawi, in Ethiopia, and other parts of the African continent as weather patterns make it impossible for subsistence farmers to feed themselves. The solidarity that we feel with our brothers and sisters in small island states in the Pacific who see their very existence threatened from global climate change. And because of that, Cardinal Bo of Myanmar, after what was possibly the worst natural disaster season that Myanmar had seen in 2015, certainly in the last century, said that we are at an ecological crossroads in history. And there's a growing sense that that is the case, and people around the world are starting to really rise to the occasion. And this We Are Still In campaign is part of a greater global campaign that we will be seeing through the end of the year. As Anne mentioned, the Global Climate Action Summit will be taking place in September. And this is an opportunity for business leaders, for local governments, for educational institutions, and for people of faith around the world to come and bring their own commitments to affecting global warming. And the challenge areas are broad. They include looking to clean energy and moving to 100% renewable. They include looking to the way our businesses are structured, including a just transition. And they include something called transformative communities, which I think is a beautiful word and something that the church can really be impactful in. And we know that globally and in the United States, the church has an amazing part to play. There are 220,000 parishes around the world. So obviously, just institutionally, we have a huge impact on global warming. 17,000, between 17,000 and 18,000 parishes in the United States alone. So our commitment is going to have a huge impact on what happens as we start to bend the curve of global warming. The Global Climate Action Summit will be taking place in San Francisco, September 12th through 14th. Global Catholic Climate Movement is working with Catholics around the world, including with the Dicastery for Integral Development at the Vatican, and with our partners, such as the Catholic Climate Movement, to bring forward a strong Catholic commitment to reducing carbon emissions and fighting against climate change. And it is incredibly exciting to see that where there's been the greatest movement has been in the United States with this Catholics We Are Still In campaign, providing an opportunity to make a strong statement and a strong commitment. And so we cannot wait to work with partners such as the Covenant to bring, to see this happening at Global Climate Action Summit, to see how many churches step forward and make this commitment and make a strong global statement that the Catholic Church is still in. This is also going to lead into pilgrimages that will be happening around the world from September through December towards the next Conference of Parties after the Paris Agreement, which will be taking place in Poland. And this strong statement of non-state actors at the Global Climate Action Summit will hopefully inspire state actors to take a stronger commitment in Paris. When they see what their communities are willing to do, what businesses are willing to do, and what the faith community is urging them to do, and the changes we are willing to make on our own, hopefully that will provide the inspiration state actors need to recommit to Paris, the Paris Agreement, in December, and to make a strong commitment to really and truly do what is necessary to keep us below 2 degrees warming of global climate change. Our commitments right now won't get us there if we only go with what we made, the commitments we made to Paris. But there is still time to change, and this campaign is an essential element of that. It's thrilling to see the Catholic Church leading on this and taking its step on its place on the global change. And I can't wait to see what happens in San Francisco at Global Climate Action Summit in September. So Paz, I'll turn it over to you to say how they can make this a reality.
Great. Thank you, Marisa. At this point, we're going to go and delve a little deeper in how you can participate in this campaign. The campaign is geared to institutional leadership, but the only way it will be successful is if Catholics in the pews are talking to their leadership and urging them to sign the declaration. So to make this as easy as possible for you, we have resources available that you can download, and they are all found on our website. And when you get the recording of this webinar, you will also get copies of these links so that you have them with you. All the resources, as I said, are on our website, and we will be updating the website as people ask us for more resources and for different types of resources. At the moment, what you will find is the letter from Bishop Pates to the Catholic community. I've had several folks asking where they can find it. It is up on our website, and you will be getting the link to it as well. You will also find the frequently asked questions document, which walks you through most of the questions that anybody would have about the We Are Still In campaign, as well as the declaration. It talks about Catholic social teaching, and it talks about also why this campaign needs to happen. You will also see there the step-by-step guide to gathering signatures. And that's a resource that really takes you by the hand and gives you the ideas of how to approach your leader. And I'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes. And you'll also find a leave behind document. Any of you who have done any lobbying on the Hill or with your political leaders, we are always telling folks to have a document to leave behind after your meeting with them that summarizes your ask and that gives them more information. You can download that and you can leave it with them. You can email it to them. It is a great resource with all the information available and with the declaration attached as well. So all the resources, again, are on our website. If you're not finding them, just email us and we will get them to you. But remember, you will also get the links when you get the recording. So what if you're nervous about this whole thing? I would say don't be. It might take a little bit of effort, but it should not be a humongous effort. What do you need to do? You first need to identify who is your leadership and which leaders do you know or do you have connections with. And by leadership, Jose did mention that it is your priest in your parish, the principal of your school, the bishop or archbishop, if it's diocese or archdiocese. If it's a Catholic university, It'll be the president or the director of an institute or center. Yes, they can sign as well. At the Catholic hospitals, it's usually the administrator or the CEO of that hospital. If it's a nonprofit Catholic organization, the executive director, president, the head of that organization. Religious order, the superior usually of that religious order or province. So you're really looking at that hierarchical map and figuring out, who do I talk to? Once you have figured out who you're going to talk to, you need to, of course, prepare yourself for the conversation and what you're asking. And that's where the resources that we've created help you. Look at the frequently asked questions, read Bishop Pate's letter. Between those two things, you should have all of the information of what the ask is and how to present it. You'll need to make an appointment with your leader. And of course, the most effective way is to dialogue face-to-face. If that can't happen, make a phone call, write them, or email them. If you feel more comfortable, go in as a group. Maybe there's a couple of friends of yours that might want to go and meet together. Then we also have the leave behind document. And as I said, that document is critical so that when you walk out, they'll leave something behind that is exactly what they need to know about. When you're preparing for your conversation and when you're talking to your leader, there's really 3 or 4 points that are critical to pass on to your leadership. One is that this declaration is not something out in left field. It reflects the church's long-standing moral basis for care creation and climate action. It's an integral part of our Catholic social teaching on life and dignity of all people. The declaration is also an act in prayerful solidarity with the We Are Still In campaign. That is the type of language that we are using. We are a complementary campaign to the We Are Still In. We are not necessarily the same. We are truly, uniquely a Catholic campaign. And third, that it is supported by the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops and is organized by Catholic Climate Covenant. At that point, when you leave the document, either after your in-person meeting or you've emailed or called them, and the institutional leader is going to think about it, or let's say that they say yes, please thank them. Send them a note of thanks. It is critical that they also keep connected with you so that they do let you know that they have signed. So follow up, thank them if they signed. And this is really the beginning. Now that you have lifted this issue with your institutional leader or with any institutional leader that you might know, this is really where we go to the next step. Anne and Jose and others have talked about the steps to taking us to San Francisco. So at that point, I would say, does your parish, school, or religious community have a creation care team that is registered with the covenant that can then follow up on these issues within your community? You get resourced every month with ideas and information to help you with doing that. So I urge you, if you don't have one, to start one. Because the Catholics Are Still In campaign will require strong follow-up and action afterwards. Yes, we are just signing at this time, but afterwards we need to take this into action. And the CCT model of organizing at the local level is really a crucial model for long-term sustainability activities. At this point, we moved to questions. And I've got a few here. Let me get to it. A couple here are coming for Anne. And Anne, I invite you to answer some of these, but then I also invite Jose, Marisa, and Marianne if you want to pipe in. First one is, and I think it has to do with the after, once the organizations sign. Should Catholic organizations be doing more to measure, report, and reduce our own emissions since we are still in? So I think it has to do with the afterwards.
Well, yes, thanks so much for that question. To measure, report, and reduce, those are exactly the active verbs that we're looking for. And having said that, I'm aware that I don't imagine that every congregation has the resources to hire an expensive consultant to help you do that. We are actively seeking out resources, including some consultant pro bono resources, so that you will have experts to work with in doing this difficult task, particularly in the measuring and the reducing. We are also working with several universities that have signed on to We Are Still In, so that we can pull in some academic talent and ideally have a bit of a roadshow, a We Are Still In roadshow across the country, so that there will be specific technical resources to help you do that. But it's absolutely the right direction to go in.
Thank you. Jose, do you have anything to add to that?
I would say that just quickly that those Catholic institutions which sign the declaration, we will be going back to them to see what kind of specific greenhouse gas emission commitments, reduction commitments they have made, and to be able to provide this contribution to the We Are Still In campaign leading up to San Francisco. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Marisa. I would like to mention one other thing that Jose, you can probably speak about more, but the covenants for people who have made a specific greenhouse emissions commitment. I believe the Catholic Energies program that the covenant has started can really provide great assistance to Catholic institutions that are trying to make that commitment. And I'm sure that'll be sent out in the information as well, but wanted just to call it out.
Thank you, Marisa. Yes, the Catholic Energies program may help. It does ask for a little bit more commitment than, it's a bigger commitment, but yes, if they're ready to take that extra step, definitely. I've got a couple of questions that have to do with hierarchy issues. And I think, Jose, you might want to pipe in on this. Well, first question is, will the bishops, cardinals represent U.S., well, will they be at the Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco? What leadership? So Marisa and Jose might want to respond to that one.
Marisa, you want to start?
Sure. So the planning process for the Global Climate Action Summit is ongoing, but there will definitely be a presence from the Catholic hierarchy, working with which U.S. bishops or cardinals will be able to attend. Cardinal Turkson will likely be there from the Vatican. So there will definitely be a presence from the United States hierarchy and church institutionally, as well as globally the church hierarchy.
Thank you. I think that answers the question.
Yeah. Next question. It's a it's a question as for the Catholic health system. When we're looking for signatures, can individual hospitals sign, or is it only the overarching health system? And I think the answer is yes, individual hospitals, but I'm going to let Jose respond better to that.
That is absolutely right, Paz. And also noting that one of the Covenant's partners is the Catholic Health Association, and they've been wonderful champions. And in fact, Catholic health institutions are leading the way with regard to the We Are Still In campaign in terms of the commitments by healthcare institutions on this effort. And so we're pleased to work with CHA on having them sign the Catholic Declaration as well.
Thanks. Question here, and I'm not going to name this diocese, I'll leave it there. Can pastors in dioceses where the bishop has not yet signed on, will there be any repercussions, do you think, if an individual pastor signs and the bishop is not on board? And how can we relieve those concerns of those pastors?
I would pray that there would not be repercussions and that the bishop supports a pastor's decision. Some of the backup justification was earlier in this webinar on those slides, which demonstrates the decades-long papal as well as U.S. Bishop leadership positions on climate change, as well as the fact that care for creation is a express theme of Catholic social teaching. All of these are foundational justifications for a pastor to step out on what is our Catholic faith.
Excellent. Anybody else want to say anything about that, or? Okay. There's another question that's similar. What are the common objections to signing and what we should be prepared for? And I will answer it a little bit here. I think the frequently asked questions really delves into that. It does respond to the, is this a Catholic initiative? Is there hierarchical support for it? So I would really say that if you look at that document, but Jose, Marianne, maybe you'd want to explain a little more?
Marianne?
I'll let you take that, Jose. You probably have a better sense throughout the U.S. Church than I would.
We actually, this is a new effort, only started a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure what any of the objections are thus far. We anticipate, though, that one vein is that this doesn't move the ball on climate action, so why should I care? Or this is not a priority for our parish or our diocese. But I would also say that there's also an increasing recognition that pastors and bishops and leaders of other Catholic institutions have a lot to do. So they just, overlooked this request. And so that's why it's so important for folks like you, Catholic climate champions, to continue to echo the call. So it really isn't oftentimes a matter of indifference. It is a matter of just, many other priorities. So hoping always in our approach is that there is goodwill on all sides and that we are all moving towards the same direction.
Thank you, Jose. This is a great question. There is this group that is going to be meeting to make a congregational commitment to reduce a specific amount of CO2 at their meeting at the end of June. And so they're wondering if there's a grace period for signing. And I'll answer it and then others can pipe in. The June 11th deadline is because we are going to be doing a press event on the 18th announcing the Catholic support for the declaration. June 18th is important because it's the 3rd anniversary of Laudato Si. Of course, if you can't make that deadline and you want to do it later, that is fine. But I would say, do remember that then your names would not be on the declaration name for the 18th. But then after that, that's when the pledges for CO2 reductions come in. And that can be all the way through September. So Jose, Anne, you may want to say anything else?
I just wanted to note that in September, we will also be announcing again the number of signatories. So institutions are welcome to continue signing up to that point.
Right.
Also, I would just add that I don't know how you're going to handle your signatories, but we are still in. It's going to just continue to build and build and grow, so that there'll be many different milestones. Of course, September is a pivotal moment, but so is November. When we'll be in Poland, and then even turning into 2019. So for us, this is kind of an open-ended sign-on opportunity.
Definitely. We will still allow folks to send us their signatures. It just won't be on the big announcement on the 18th. There may be then another announcement in September. I'm getting a lot of questions that are very specific. Things like this, Jose. what if the bishop signs, but an individual pastor does not? Or the other question had to do with, and I think, Jose, you used the word protocol, and the question is protocol question mark. I think they're asking what you meant by the word protocol.
Protocol with regard to, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Maybe the person can explain a little bit more what she meant by protocol question mark. But the question about can creation care teams sign the declaration if the pastor does not want to? That's a very good question. I have an answer, but I think Jose may want to answer that one before I do.
No, pause, please, feel free.
I would say that it would probably not be good relationship building, that the institutional signature of your parish is quite important, that you work on trying to convince your pastor that this is important, especially if you have a creation care team that is active within that parish. I would wonder why that pastor would not want to sign it. There's nothing really in this declaration that is not a Catholic manifestation of our faith. Therefore, I would wonder why you would have to go in that direction. Jose, what do you think?
I agree. Well said.
Yeah. Does the parish need the bishop's approval to participate, Jose?
No, I don't believe so. Again, going to the fact that this is established Catholic teaching. And then with regard to the opposite question, what if the bishop signs and the individual pastor will not? That is also up to the individual pastor under the principle of subsidiarity.
Exactly. Here's a question that has to do with how do they find out who has signed if it's posted, and what is the protocol for that? Maybe Jose, you'd like to talk about that.
Yes, indeed. So we will work on a case-by-case basis with interested parties wanting to understand who has signed on. For example, in a town in, let's just pick a state, Kansas, one of the parishioners was asking whether anyone in her area had signed on, and so we provided her with the signers and any other information she may need that would help her and help her pastor sign on. And I would say as an overall matter right now, we do have signatures from archdioceses, dioceses, parishes, healthcare institutions, colleges and universities, non-governmental organizations, orders, middle schools, high schools, and yes, so pretty much the full gamut of the Catholic universe right now.
There's a question, I think, that is both Jose and Anne. Will there be any coordination between Catholics, the faith groups that are in the We Are Still In that are not Catholic, and the Catholics are still in? So at some point, will there be interfaith conversations of those that signed the declarations?
I'll take the interfaith part and also ask to Marisa, and then Anne, feel free. We are working with Anne at We Are Still In. We're also working with Marisa with regard to the Climate Action Summit and interfaith efforts, and I'm also working with Cassandra Carmichael of NRPE, who has put together a Faith Still In website. And this answers the question that one of the questions we had about, well, what can other people of faith do? They can join the faith signature on Faith Still In. You can just Google that. That's a website that signs on other faith traditions and joins them to the We Are Still In campaign.
Anne, Marisa, I don't hear you.
Yeah, thanks for that answer, Jose. I mean, we Are Still In we are talking on a very regular basis to other faith groups, and we're very inclined to encourage those interfaith conversations. Of course, we'll defer to you all and what works best for you, but we absolutely like are very much in favor of building really a faith, interfaith coalition within We Are Still In, that can communicate with itself and with the larger We Are Still In set of signatories and steering committee.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think the faith community has really stepped up broadly. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of work from coordinating Catholics globally, but organizations such as Green Faith have also been trying to organize commitments not only across different faith lines, but also from individual faith leaders who are willing to make their own personal commitments. And they believe there is an ecumenical, if not interfaith, mass at the Global Climate, service at the Global Climate Action Summit as well, and an opportunity for different faith groups to meet and gather and make these commitments.
Okay, thank you all. Because it is 2 p.m., I'm going to be faithful to our schedule. There are about 3 questions that haven't been answered, but they are not specific to Catholics Are Still In or We Are Still In. They're a little bit more general, and I'll try to answer those via email. Thank you to our panelists for taking time to join us today. I think this was incredibly informative. We'll have the webinar up on our website as well as part of the resource. When people sign off, there is a survey that they will be able to take. And if you need more information, please just let us know. You can email us at info@catholicclimatecovenant.org. If you have a question that we didn't answer, send it there, and I can then send it to the correct person or try to answer it myself. A huge thanks, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.